Here we go.
And we're on.
And we're on. Welcome to another episode of AusTableTalk. Thank you for joining us. My name is Luke, and I am at the table with Stephen Emerson.
Yes, you are.
Evening.
We are here.
Yes, I am. Why did that just feel like a really forceful introduction?
I don't know.
Yeah, I got no idea.
Just thought it'd be funny.
How are you guys?
Good.
Yeah?
Doing good.
I feel like I interrupted you. You were already like cracking the Bible, and you were just like ready to go.
It's there.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
Ready for action.
Ready
Sword
for
is
action.
ready.
That's right.
Yeah.
Nah, week's been good. How's yours?
Mine was good. I actually am marginally older than I was last week.
Isn't that the same as every week?
Ah,
Yeah,
that's why you said that you were growing old. It don't make sense. When I got here today, I said,
Yeah.
what have you been doing this week? You said getting older. I said, I've been getting older too. You actually had a birthday and that's what you meant.
Yes.
Yeah. I caught on, finally.
It just took a minute.
sorry.
It's totally fine. That's all right. I wasn't.
Why? We're all getting older. It's
Yeah.
a good point. Anyway, sorry.
It's okay. I wasn't fishing for a happy birthday. It was just like that was the most notable thing that happened. But no, that was good. Aside from that, just work. Actually, a cool thing I've been doing this week is I have been. This is such an old person thing to say. I have been getting to bed earlier. And I am so excited about that because I'm getting up earlier.
That's good.
That has been great. So I actually had to take Lily, who, if anyone has listened to a lot of these episodes, you would have heard Lily on the show before. I had to take her to the train station at 5 a.m.
Brutal.
Yeah, I don't know, right? On Tuesday. And so I did that and I came back, and because I was awake then, I'm like, this is great. So I was like an hour and a half. I had no children, no nothing. And so I watched actually in the Reels and Feels section, we watch a clip. I'm going to play a clip from what I saw in that moment because I watched a video at the time. But if anyone hasn't watched it, I know I'm being super scattered right now. If anyone hasn't watched it, there is a new series that Lightbearers are releasing called Gospel Conversations.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It is fire, so good. If you haven't watched it, well worth it. I'm like 3 episodes into the series, so it is
Cool.
It's very good. And I have a clip from that to share in a minute.
Nice.
So, but yeah, hey, we're here. Why not?
Yeah, let's
just do it. So
Yeah. Jump right
let's
in.
watch this. So Shannon is our producer tonight. So you can't hear or see him, but you can take our word for the fact he exists. Shannon, thank you for what you're doing. Can we have the reel, please?
Not opposed to effort, it's opposed to earning. And then you said, hey, I think that's a Dallas Willard quote. He says grace. Grace is not opposed to effort, it is opposed to earning. Earning is an attitude. Effort is an action.
Nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a really cool way to kind of demarcate
Yes.
about, demarcate between what is and isn't happening here.
Right.
So the short answer to your question is no. There is no sense, no biblical sense in which the gospel is opposed to human effort. But certainly the gospel eclipses any possibility of human earning. The gospel is not opposed to effort, it's opposed to earning. And then you said, hey, I think that's a Dallas Willard quote.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, what do you think of that? Sorry, you go.
No,
I saw you winding up.
I was just going to say, I feel like I need to watch it a few more times to really get what he was saying. But
So the reason that I loved this quote in particular is that the reference here is to legalism or righteousness by works. So the idea is that a lot of people demonize effort when what they're really opposing is earning, the idea of earning God's favor or earning salvation. And so drawing this line allows us to theologically be okay with effort. We're applying effort, but why are we applying effort? Are we applying effort because we're trying to obtain God's favor? Or are we applying effort because we are co-laboring with him and we genuinely want what he wants?
Yeah. Yeah, it's to be better, not to earn salvation.
Yeah. Yeah. I just like it's a principle I've believed, but it's an articulation I haven't heard. So
but
I
you
enjoyed that.
You shouldn't just not be doing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've literally had conversations with people where they're like,
Works are evil.
yeah, works are
Don't
evil.
do anything.
Yeah, but they literally are scared
Need to read James.
of trying to do good things because they don't want to be doing it for the wrong reasons.
Really?
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So they're like, until I just want to do it spontaneously, I'm not going to try.
But yeah, well, I'll quote James. He said, show me your faith without works, and I'll show you my works without faith. Or I think
I'll show you my faith by my works.
Well, by my works, yeah. But I don't know, like I find when you're doing stuff for other people, that's when you're closer to God. Like He calls us to that, and He's there doing it with us. He doesn't call you to be like, oh no, I can't do that because I don't know. That's almost works. It's like I'm earning my salvation by not earning my salvation.
Isn't that a work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like people go, oh, when I become completely in harmony with God, then the works will follow. So I'm going to get completely in harmony with God first, and then it'll all come naturally. But a way of speeding up the process, or even a necessary way of getting in harmony with God, is the works, right?
Well, and also evangelism. It's like they'll know you by your works.
Right.
It's like they don't know you by
It's
your
like
apathy.
all of these things help you get closer to God. It's like the turbo effect again.
Yes.
My favorite analogy. Yeah. It all has to work together, and the more that each one of them build on each other, the higher it gets. And but yeah, anyway.
No, absolutely accurate. I love it. So that was one thing. The next one that the next reel that I have here, and by the way, you guys need to up your reel game because like,
I don't watch shorts.
these are both for me, man. This one's just a bit of funny, okay?
The draft.
Okay, this one is just a bit of humor because the topic that we have tonight, if you've clicked on this, you probably already know the topic, but the topic is why the next Pope is irrelevant. And so since we're talking about the Pope, I thought this would be an appropriate reel to start us off with.
Watching the NFL draft?
No, watching the Pope draft.
So many good prospects in the College of Cardinals.
Yeah, like Peter Turkson.
And Luis Antonio Tagle.
And Shador Sanders.
I got my money on Peter Ado.
What? No way.
No.
He's a scrub.
Youngest Cardinal ever.
God couldn't bless a blind kid if he was stuck inside of an orphanage.
Your Pope Benedict Cardinal.
You're not fanatics?
No, Mitchell and Ness.
You guys think they'll take Shador?
I already bombed his confessional interviews.
Do you honestly believe that Turkson is more popeable than Paroline?
Advocate of the poor. Okay, speaks 5 languages.
All right,
He's fluent in Latin.
Dude, it's the Vatican. Everyone speaks Latin. He's a playmaker. Okay, he negotiates treaties.
When did you get drafted as a Lutheran priest?
You son of a bitch!
With the first to pick in the Pope draft, the Vatican selects Shador Sanders.
Are you guys watching that?
That's funny as.
That's such a good skit.
Yeah, I thought that.
Oh man,
was clever.
they knocked it out of the park.
Yep.
Oh, far out. That was funny.
Yeah, I thought you guys would appreciate that.
I was actually like trying my hardest not to laugh out loud because I knew that no one would be able to hear anything. Hold it in. That was good.
The funny thing is, when I watched this, like literally, like a couple of hours before that, I had Googled like who are the front runners to be the next Pope, and so I've actually read up all these people, and so I know all these people, and I'm like, yeah, this is everything they said is right.
What are the odds? We should put a bet on it.
The article I read literally was referencing the betting statistics and
my
where you could
goodness.
bet on it.
Oh,
So,
That's
like,
so funny.
That's wild.
yeah,
You bet on anything.
yeah, but that's exactly right. People will bet on it.
Oh wow, 9-4 for Pietro Parolin, hey?
Yes.
Shout out to the gambling episode that you guys did.
Yeah, that is true. If you want to go back and listen to that one, we can recommend it.
That's crazy.
Especially if you've got money on the next Pope. So,
You may have a problem.
yeah.
For free and confidential help, please call.
Okay.
Gamble responsibly.
Before
You win some, you lose more.
this is only going to make sense to Australian listeners, but these are gambling commercials that are mandated by the government, so that we have. Ah, wow. Okay, I want to issue a disclaimer. If Dave was here, he would be railing on me for more disclaimers. But the disclaimer I want to put out there right now is that if you are listening to this episode and you yourself are a Catholic, we love you. We don't have a problem with you whatsoever. We are talking about the papal system. We're going to be looking at
institution.
The institution.
Yep.
That's right. And so as we go through this, if you hear something and you think, oh man, these guys have it in for me, or whatever that is, like reach out to us, send us a message. Like we would love to talk to you about it, because we state very much so that we're not really even saying anything about the Pope himself. I mean, that may come up in the discussion, but what I'm meaning is the real crux of what we're getting at. We're talking about man-made institutions. So
Literally.
yeah.
Yeah, I work with a Catholic guy, and I love him. He's great. And he told me he was Catholic. I was like, Catholic, that's great. Great community. Very corrupt church. And he was like, yeah, I know. I'm like, all right. He goes there because it's his friends and family, and he has a great time, and he worships and everything. But
yeah,
I think a lot of them get it too.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So, but just for like disclosure, do you guys? I mean, you obviously work with someone who's Catholic, but do you have you had much interaction with the Catholic Church or
a few people,
any
but
context?
Not a whole lot of intimate knowledge of the system. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All the Catholics that I know, other than this guy that I work with, they're all like, "Oh yeah, I was baptized as a baby, and I baptized my children."
Yep. Nominal Catholics.
Yeah, nominal Catholics. Yeah. Have very little to do with it, but they say I'm a Catholic.
Yeah.
So
in my case, my dad was a Catholic, born a Catholic family, Maltese Catholic family, and so the family is in Malta, being a Catholic is there's no such thing, I think, as a nominal Catholic in Malta. It's like they're extra Catholic, and so that was his experience, and he only. He did leave the Catholic Church, but he was well into his 30s before that happened. So so like I've got a lot of family who are, and so I've seen had a lot of conversations about it. And typically they're such devout people, right? And I've got so much respect for them and the amount of devotion that they have, especially like people who are serious about it. The amount of devotion they have to their church is fantastic. I guess at the very root of it, like the reason you could say that this is even a conversation, like where they started or where the church came from. If you ask a Catholic, in virtually every single case, they will cite one specific passage in Scripture, and I thought that would be a good place for us to start our conversation. So that's Matthew. So Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. Matthew 16, and maybe I'll start a little bit earlier than that. So Jesus is asking his disciples, who do men say that I am? I'm back in verse 13. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" So they said, "Some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered and said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered and said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. And I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he commanded his disciples that they should tell no one that he was Jesus the Christ. So how do you guys understand that passage or read that passage? Because most Catholics will tell you straight up that this is a clear description of Peter being handed the role of Pope, that he is the leader, the boss of the church.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it sort of makes sense from that perspective, to be honest. I don't think it. I think it doesn't prove that, but I think if you have the perspective of, Peter started the church, and the church has continued, and it's never finished, like running, ever since Peter. Well, then it sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it is literally 3 verses later, he says, "Get behind me, Satan. You're an offense to me." But we won't get into that.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. See, the thing that I would point out here is the point of interest, and I I've heard people say this, and so this is not coming from me because I don't speak Greek. But the understanding that I have of this passage is that Jesus is in the original language. There's a play on words that's happening here, right?
Yep.
So he is when he says, "Where are we?" Simon Peter answered, verse 18, I think it is, and I shall say to you, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." And so the play on words is the word Peter means stone or pebble. Whereas the word that he uses for rock is Petra, not Petros. So when he says you are Petros, you are a little stone or a pebble, and then he says on this Petra, which is massive boulder, like mountain-sized item,
Right.
I will build my church. And so he's saying like you are tiny, but on this, as in referring to himself, on this rock I will build my church.
Yeah. Because the argument to say that Peter was like the strongest apostle who built the church, like it doesn't work because that was Paul. Very much so. Paul was the one who planted the most churches and was the most famous apostle and really, really got things going bigger than any of them. So I'm sort of like, well, was the church built off of Peter's back? Like, not like just historically, it just sort of wasn't really. You know, he was a great apostle. He did great things, but he wasn't the biggest one. So if you're going to say, oh, he was the biggest one and the church was built off of him, well, I would say not really. But yeah. So what you're saying is Jesus is saying you're a smaller version of me.
Yeah. Or you are almost holding up his inadequacy, right? Like that you are, you're modeled after me, but your faith and your trust is in me. Like I am the anchor upon which everything else, all the rest of the building comes together upon this, right? Yeah.
That's interesting. So, I mean, playing devil's advocate, we see in Acts that Peter did have a fairly significant role in leading the church, but like they said, like Paul called him out, and Paul says in his own letters, imitate me as I imitate Christ, which I'm sure Peter would, say amen to that.
I just think historically Paul's a much better candidate for first pope than Peter was.
Yeah, but he was never he was the evangelist. He wasn't rather Peter's more like hold the fort, get everything set up.
Oh yeah, I get that.
Anyway. Yeah. But I don't know, but we see the way the churches should be set up that Paul expanded anyways, just with elders, and these the Bible goes into takes the time to go, this is how you should set up your leadership. These are the people who should be doing it. But then why do we have to infer this other individual who's the head of the church from a couple of verses that is not really explicit at all?
Yeah.
Doesn't talk about it as an office.
It's there's no cardinals, there's no bissups, there's no it's
and there are bishops.
Not that there's anything wrong with church structure, but it's very inferred rather than
and like that sort of makes me think of another point is if they want to say that Peter was the first pope or Peter was the first head of the church, I'm fine with them thinking that, because if I have a problem with the modern day pope was
Peter.
nothing like what Peter would have been. Everything has changed since then in the church has completely nothing's the same.
It's it's been a gradual evolution, right? But it's happened over such a long period of time. And it
just keeps changing.
And I'm in this place where I've been alive long enough to be looking at the Catholic Church and saying, oh, they're running not like they used to.
Yeah.
And even that, and that's in, I'm not even 40 yet, and I can see that they've changed considerably. Like when I was younger, I mean, I only remember 3 popes, right? So Pope John Paul II, Benedict, and now Francis.
Yep.
But their reigns have been very different seasons. John Paul II was still quite traditional, but he was the first pope that was well known for being empathetic and a much kinder figure from a public perspective, right? Benedict was a return to a more firm role of the papacy, if you like, and Francis has been a dramatic swing.
Oh, crazy!
You know,
the left.
Yeah,
to the left as far
Yeah,
as
he's
far as
lefty.
the political system goes.
I watched a video like when they did the like the news items and like like a review of his life. It was interesting to see some of the things that he'd actually come out with during that time, and I'm surprised that he didn't get the sack for
Yeah.
most of it. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Catholics were upset with some of the stuff that Francis was doing.
Mm.
But I remember when John Paul II died, and like all of the American presidents went to his funeral.
Yeah.
That was like
That
a
was the
huge
first.
deal. Everyone was like, "Oh my goodness, what's going on?" Like
Yes.
these two sort of powers have collided for the first time ever, seemingly. That was crazy back in the day. Oh, yeah, had all the Adventists going.
Yeah.
It's,
When
it's
the Pope
coming.
when the Pope went to visit, was it JFK? Was it JFK the Pope went to visit? Like,
No, Reagan.
Reagan?
Yeah,
Sorry,
it was
Reagan. But like it was like all
Reagan went to visit the Pope. Yeah.
okay.
That was the first meeting of like presidents.
That was the first one. Well, whatever it was, the first time the Pope went to the US, it was done super quiet.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of something different. I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it was like very all cloaked in secrecy kind of thing,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden there's this much more friendly relationship, which shouldn't be surprising. If you study scripture and you look at what the prophecies are indicating, like that shouldn't be a surprise that that's a trend that's happening. But yeah,
Well, Reagan went and visited the Pope, and I think that was the first time a president had gone to the Vatican.
okay,
And he installed a ambassador to the Vatican, and like everyone in the
That'd be a
States was
cushy
like
job, wouldn't it?
freaking out. Yeah, I'm trying to get some keys to the basement if I was in there. Anyway,
yeah,
I don't know if you'd want to go down there.
and what was I trying to say? Oh yeah, and everyone in the States was like freaking out, like, oh, you don't send like a political figure to a church. And he was like, no, I'm not sending a political figure to a church. I'm sending a political figure to a political entity, because the Vatican was now a country and it was becoming more and more political.
Well, it's literally listed here as one of the popes. Like his role is the sovereign of the Vatican City.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, it's his job. Like he's the big dog.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's why when Mussolini gifted the Vatican to the papacy, it was like, oh, finally the church has come back into political power. Like for the whole time that it was in power, it was political, religious power, and it was the superpower of the world for such a long time. And then when everything collapsed, and then like 140 years later or something, and they were given the Vatican, and now they're a political power again.
Yeah.
And that was such a big deal. But anyway, I'm ranting on history stuff.
Mm.
but it's important, right?
Yeah,
Because
it is important,
if we look
especially when you see Bible prophecy.
yes,
That fatal wound being healed is very important to understand.
well, since you're chatting about that, did you want to read that? Like, just
Let's do it.
Yeah, I just feel like we're chatting, but let's put some verses into it.
Revelation 13, is it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Verse 3.
Yeah.
So Revelation 13, verse 3, and I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. Yeah, and then again in verse 15, verse 14, end of verse 14, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. So at the end of the 1260-day prophecy is 1798. I mean, we really don't have time to get into all of this.
Yeah.
But it's 1798, and that was when Napoleon sent General Berthier to wipe out the papacy, took the Pope off of his throne.
Yep.
Like up to this stage, like kings would go before the Pope, kneel down and kiss his feet. he was in charge of everything. Took the Pope, put him in captivity. He died, and then the church was in relative.
Yeah, they appointed new popes, but they had no power.
They had no power at all.
Yeah,
up until
1929.
Yeah, 29, when Mussolini, who historically not a great dude, gave the Vatican to the papacy again.
Yeah.
And they, even then, like, they didn't really have any power, but they had political status again.
Yes.
And they've been building up.
Yeah, they've got way more influence now.
Oh man, so
Way
much,
more.
so much.
I was having Bible studies with somebody once, and this is probably 11 years ago, something like that. And we were having a conversation about this, and he said, "Oh no, the papacy is not an ascendancy. It's dying. Like, its influence is diminishing." And I'm like, I don't know where that guy is anymore, but I'd love to have that conversation with him now and be like, is it really? Like, it doesn't look like it's diminishing to me. Just to give a little bit of extra, I know we don't have time to go through all of those things, but maybe just to wrap a little bit, I just wanted to go back to the beginning of chapter 13 where it says, and I stood on the sand of the sea and saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on the horns 10 crowns, and on the heads a blasphemous name. So the word picture that's going on here, Revelation that's a book of prophecy and symbols. And if you read the chapter 1 of Revelation, it says very specifically that this book is symbols and they need to be interpreted. And, we get that picture. And so as you're going through, you compare the symbols because the Bible gives you the answers. It's just that it doesn't give them all to you in the one place. And so as you go through the Bible, we can do studies on this. If anyone's interested, like, leave us a comment, send us a message. We can go deeper into these things.
Yeah.
But for the sake of time, the conclusion that we and many, many other Christians throughout the last couple of thousand years have come to the conclusion that beasts are representative of nations and kingdoms.
Yeah.
The Bible says that. This particular one is rising up out of the sea, and that is usually a picture of multitudes of peoples. And so you've got a nation coming up out of a densely populated place, and that's going to be important for the next beast because there's 2 beasts here. But then it gives the features, right? The 7 heads, 10 horns, and on the horns 10 crowns, and on his head a blasphemous name. Something blasphemous is something that takes the place of God or usurps God's role. And so this is a nation that takes the place of God. That's the basic principle that's going on. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like the feet of a bear, and it describes a bunch of things that we have seen already in Daniel's prophecies. And so it's like pulling on a bunch of imagery from over there, and then
it's copy-paste.
It's copy-paste, right? So, and then we coming up to this part that we read where it talks about one of the heads, as if it had been mortally wounded, the deadly wound was healed, and the world marveled and followed the beast. And so the assertion that we're making based on our understanding of prophecy is that this beast is the papacy, the system of the papacy, and the deadly wound was General Bethia dethroning the Pope and throwing him in prison. And the healing of that wound was Mussolini returning the Vatican and making the papacy a world power again. And since then, it has been an ascendancy. The world wandered after the beast.
Because we all thought that the papacy was dead, and then it came back. Yeah. That's why it's called a
literally. Could you imagine
a mortal wound?
Can you imagine pulling someone out of like the 1880s and saying, "Oh, and by the way," and like showing them what is going on for the Pope's funeral right now? Like they would be blown away by that.
They'd be like, I don't even know what the Pope's name is.
He was not an important figure.
He was nobody in the 1880s. Oh man.
Which actually is one of the really interesting things, because our church came to life during that time where the papacy was out of order. Our church, right? And so the thing that I find really interesting is that people thought that the Adventists were crazy because they're saying that the papacy is going to be reborn and come into ascendancy. And they're like, are you kidding me? Like, they don't even have any civic authority over themselves anymore,
Yeah.
And so it's interesting.
Yeah. I just want to make a note of verse 4. It says, so they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. So you know, when we talk about irrelevancy, maybe a bit later in the episode, we can come back to that. But yeah, I just thought while we're here, just bookmark that one.
Yeah. So who's the papacy in bed with?
Yeah, Revelation 12:9. So just
It's
a chapter
important to
earlier.
know.
It says, so the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan. So
I guess a good question would be, is the papacy system and the Pope, are they evil? Are they going to be saved? You know,
I love that question. Is the Pope going to be saved?
Is the Pope evil?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is he going to be saved?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would personally say, and I've had people disagree with me, but I would say it is entirely possible for the Pope to be saved.
Really?
Yeah.
How?
Possible.
Okay.
So I definitely.
I mean, it's possible, but is it likely?
How would you know?
I mean, it's very unlikely. Is it the head of the papacy? It's like the most anti-God system that's ever been set up.
Well, you got to remember that as an institution, they do a lot of good though. So especially the last Pope was really into feeding the poor and social justice, all of these good things. So it's a bit hard to go too hard that way and say this is an evil institution and the whole system's corrupt. It's Catholic care, and I was talking to one of our church pastors, and I was just asking him, I forget what we were talking about, but kind of how they get paid or something come up, because there's different schemes. And he said if it wasn't for the Catholics, the way that the pastors get paid in every other church basically wouldn't be able to happen, and all the government subsidy for churches and non-profits pretty much wouldn't exist, because every time the government goes to change something, the Catholics go, no, you don't, or we're withholding our services, and the government goes, oh, no, we'll subsidize. Because the Catholics say, well, we'll stop and you'll be stuffed because we're giving all of this back to the community.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway.
And so so just to add some qualification, because I hear what you're saying as well, right?
Yeah.
I'm being generous in my thinking on this for the sheer fact that I can't judge the heart, and I am not aware of any sins directly that the Pope has perpetrated, right? So I know all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and he is a human just like I'm a human, and so he is just as deserving of salvation as I am. The question is, does he avail himself of that, right? So the question is not is he going to be saved and can we condemn him? The question is, does he avail himself of that? Does he connect himself with Christ? And strictly speaking, I think it's, as you say, it's technically possible. Whether he did or not,
does the Pope do confession?
And if he does, who to?
I guess that's
what I'm saying. So he claims to be in the place of God. He claims to be able to forgive sins. The papacy is the institution that has completely torn up the Ten Commandments and thrown it in the bin and written their own.
Yeah.
They've just added all these crazy heresies into the Bible that have, caused priests to be pedophiles and just all this horrible stuff. I'm just if you're at the head of that, there's no way you don't know what's going on. There's no way that you don't know that you're the Antichrist. There's no way that you're not.
Is the Pope the Antichrist?
No, the Pope's not the Antichrist, but the papacy is the Antichrist. It says it, in this chapter that it has a man at its head.
Yeah. An Antichrist power, and actually, it's worth mentioning that in 1 John 2:18, because I want to add some texture to that, and I want to come back to this point, but just before we get too far away from that.
Well, I'll read the first verse because I wanted to get there. We're going to the same chapter.
I just can't believe that those at the very top of the papacy, of the Catholic Church, the ones right at the top running things, don't know who they are, don't know who they're serving, don't know what they're doing.
You know what?
They know what's going on.
I would cite King Saul.
Okay.
King Saul had, in the situation where Samuel didn't come to do the sacrifice, right? He gets to the place where he's like, nope, not waiting anymore, doing it myself. That was wrong, right? And he knew that was wrong. he had convinced himself otherwise, because then as soon as Samuel comes, he's like, oh, but I had to. The people made me do it. Yeah, like he gives all of these things. I don't think that's true for a second. Of course, he could have waited, but he was self-deceived. He had convinced himself that this is the only way, or this is the right thing to do. And I think a lot of the people that have done bad things in history have got themselves to the place where they are self-deceived. And I don't think for a second that self-deception would save them. But in my mind, whether the Pope knows that he is the head of an organization that is doing terrible things or not is largely irrelevant to the story of Scripture, right? Because the story of Scripture that we're reading shows that there is and I would say thinking of it as the Catholic Church alone is inadequate, right? Like I think the system of false religion is way bigger than that.
Yeah.
God has his people in every church, Catholics included. But the system of false religion is any system that is, presenting the truth not presenting the truth as it is in Jesus, or as the gospel is.
And or forcing, i.e. the Dark Ages and the Crusades, conformance to a set religion, opposed to invitation. Yeah,
and so that's Muslim, that's Catholic, that's Eastern Orthodox, that's apostate Protestantism, that's all virtually almost every single one is a part of Babylon.
I think that's the thing. Like we stopped reading in the first half of chapter 13, but the second half of chapter 13 of Revelation is apostate Protestantism. So it's not that it's not that there's anything inherently wrong. Well, I won't say
there
that.
Is, but yeah,
there's things wrong, but it's not that Catholics in and of themselves are a problem. It's just that there's religion that isn't focused on Jesus and His Word is a problem.
Yes.
And that's on both sides of the fence. It's not that it's...
And God has his people smattered through all of them.
That's just says, come out of her, my people.
Come out of her, my people. That's right.
Yeah.
And so just in the same breath that I think there'll be people in my church that won't be saved, I think there'll be people in the Catholic Church that will be. So more, right?
Yeah.
More, because numerically...
Way more devout.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the level of commitment they have, and I have great respect for that. Where I think the real problem is the people who get it, who understand, and have silenced their conscience. And if the Pope fits into that category, well then I think
millstone.
Yeah, millstone, right? If you silence your conscience, that is where the issue really lies. And that comes all the way down, from the top to the bottom of the organization.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the wolf in sheep's clothes is a very real thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay,
and I think that the Catholic care and all the stuff that you're saying is the sheep's clothes. And I think that underneath it's the wolf.
I agree, but sorry.
I've just got a Bible verse that I think is relevant to this. Matthew 24 and 25, maybe a couple more. Actually, let's start in 23. Then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out. Or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will the Son of Man be. So I guess the point that I want to make from this, and he also says it in verse 4 and 5, I'll read real quick, of the same chapter. And Jesus answered and said to them, take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And so I guess if he's even says right here, see, I've told you beforehand. Like if anyone's saying that they're coming in the place of God, or that they are God, or that they can do the things that I can do, or that I'm over here, I'm over there, I'm blah, 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 don't believe it. There's only one me, and I've already told you exactly how I'm going to return.
Yeah.
Right? And so, there's going to be the false Christs, the false prophets. Even just saying like, oh, I have I'm a mouthpiece for God. I have the ability to forgive your sins, blah, blah, blah.
And a lot of that doctrine comes from the Apocrypha.
Yeah.
Which the more I've been exposed to it, the more you hear it, which is super interesting. Like Maccabees says that you can atone for sins by giving alms and different things like that. Which
interesting.
It's interesting. So it's not that they're just making it all up. It's just that a lot of it's coming from these extra canonical books, which they include in their Bible, as well as some other stuff, which I don't know where they get that from, like extra chapters in Daniel and things like that. But we don't have to talk about that. But a lot of their theology, when you read, well, I haven't read the Apocrypha, but when you listen to people talking about the Apocrypha and other things like that, you understand where they're coming from, because they can point to verses in the Bible and say, this is what the Bible says.
Yeah.
And if they truly believe that, then like you can't really fault the reasoning, aside from they haven't thought of it from the different perspective.
Yeah.
And this shouldn't surprise us, because right from the get-go, the people that are inside the church are usually the ones that are more dangerous than the ones that are outside the church. Like look at even Jesus' disciples. Judas was the the Romans weren't really the problem, right? Like they were the ones that killed Jesus, but like the dominoes fell internally. And I think that has always been true throughout the ages. It's especially from the time where the persecution of Christians stopped, because once that happened and there was the opportunity for power inside the church, people took that. And I think that is what...
And it didn't take long for the persecution to start right back up again.
Oh, yeah. But this is what I was thinking. You're
like Trump.
Yeah. But you were making that the statement earlier, talking about the Pope, whether the Pope was saved or not. And I think, there's a great chance that he wasn't if he was conscious of these things. But where my brain went was, well, originally the Pope was the Bishop of Rome. Like, how far back do we go before we say, oh, he was cool? He was cool.
You couldn't know.
You couldn't know,
You couldn't
right?
know. Yeah, but we're talking about the one that we've just lost.
Yeah. I know, but I guess what I'm thinking is, I've seen. I'll give you an example. There's people that I know that have they take part in things that to me seem very clearly sinful. Very clearly sinful. The reason that they do that is not because they have decided to be rebellious, but because that was normalized for them in their experience. And so my question is, to what degree is it possible? And I don't actually think it's important for the outcome of this conversation, but I'm just hypothesizing here. To what degree is it possible that someone could be born inside of the Catholic system, be thoroughly convinced of its authenticity, and then desire to do good and have ambition in them to grow and go through the ranks? If somebody does that, how high do you get before you absolutely have to know that you're believing the wrong thing? Like, I don't think you necessarily have to, because we know that God winks in times of ignorance. I think it's possible if someone was willfully ignorant, let's say, and that's a problem, right? If someone is willfully ignorant, but like, let's say they were just so much in their bubble that they were not exposed to these teachings. I mean, hopefully God would make that possible, but like, how high can they get in the system while still being genuinely ignorant? Is it as far as Pope, or is it as far as Cardinal, or is it like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I get what you're saying.
So that's my only point.
No, it's a good argument.
The likelihood is,
it's like the book that we recommended last week again.
Again.
with
Nabil
Qureshi, that's it. Yeah. Because he was like super devout, pursuing God in what
as a Muslim
even Catholics would say is a false religion.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's just anyway. But yeah, I like you said, but I mean, God led him in certain ways. So as long as we're seeking truth, I think is the goal for everyone. Because not even we definitely don't have it right. So everyone should be on this path of seeking truth in Jesus. And as long as we're on that path, we're all good.
Yeah. And so what about the next stage? Because I mean, you guys remember what happened the last time a pope died, right? All of a sudden, everybody was out. Oh, this new pope, you know, he's the one. Like, this is a problem. Like, I mean, please don't go down the YouTube rabbit hole of like, you know, which pope is the Antichrist, because you'll be there for, you know, the rest of
The
time.
Bible says plural, so it's all G.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. So yeah, that being the case, like why do we do that as humans, right? You know, people that are looking and thinking and presumably intelligent people, every time somebody arrives and is, you know, a new world leader.
I think I don't know.
People just do it.
For me,
Yeah.
I mean, I always do it. Like when the Pope died, I was like, oh, next Pope, it's got to be the last one. It's going to bring in, you know, all of the final events, and we're going to find. I think it's just wishful thinking, to be honest.
Yeah.
Hopeful. Like, like let's fast forward. Let's
just get through
speed
this.
things up.
Yeah.
And when Francis got in, a lot, because he was
First Jesuit Pope.
Yeah, he was the first Jesuit Pope, and like he had relatives that were Seventh-day Adventists, and you know, who, I don't know if it's true, but who had apparently studied, you know, Daniel 7 and 8 and Revelation 13 and everything with him, and I was like, oh, that's crazy! Like this Pope, he knows it all, but he's still Pope anyway. Like, you know, I don't know how much truth there is to that, but yeah, there was a lot of hype around that.
Yeah,
when it first happened, and. Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with us getting hyped up. Is it a problem? Like,
Well,
the new Pope is in, let's get hyped up. Like, yeah, he's going to be the one to do it. Like, it's going to be him and Trump, and they're going to bring in Sunday law. And
I think we can talk about it, but like, I actually think it's damaging.
You reckon?
I do, and I don't think there's a problem with you as an individual.
Like date setting.
Yeah,
yeah.
Date setting.
Yeah, in the same way.
Yeah,
date
the
setting,
whole deal, because then the whole world sees is, oh, here they go again.
Yeah.
And so when it actually
Crazy
happens, where is the credibility? You know,
Yeah.
and so I think it unnecessarily discredits the people that are.
We shouldn't be making predictions if we don't have the gift of prophecy, for sure.
Yes.
I don't think we should be making predictions by any means, but I also don't think that we shouldn't be going like, pay attention. Like, could this be the one? You know?
Yeah. Well, like Jesus says, like, so back to Matthew 24, where Emerson was reading before, it says, "Learn the parable from the fig tree. When the branch is tender and it puts forth leaves, know that summer is near. So also when you see these things, know that it is near at the doors."
Yeah.
So to some extent, like, I agree that focusing on the negative is not helpful at all. But when these things happen, I think it's a good internal jog for us to go, oh, hang on a minute. Like, you know, I haven't thought about that for a while.
Yeah.
And also maybe let's start preaching the stuff and teaching the stuff that we should be teaching, because there's going to become a point when that's not overly achievable, or you've wasted all the opportunities you could have had.
Yeah, I think Satan has done an excellent job of polarizing the world to the degree that the people who are preaching prophecy, like, yes, there are some who are doing a really good balanced job of it, but there's a lot of people who are nut jobs, you know? And so the people who are outside of the church structure, they look at them and go, wow, those Christians are nuts. Or the people that are inside the church that actually are moderate in their thinking, and they're like, you know, let's try to be accurate and, you know, not date set, and like, you know, like we're hopefully having this conversation trying to achieve. For us, we look at that and we go, I don't want to be associated with these people. Like, these people are crazy. And so like we're reluctant to be too loud about saying what the Bible says, which is not helpful either, you know? So yeah, I think
Can I push back on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Like, if we don't, like, the nut job preachers who are preaching the truth in a nutty way are converting nut jobs.
Yes.
Like, you got to remember that.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
They're the only ones that can convert the nut jobs.
And
so we need those nut job preachers, because they're converting all the nut jobs. Because if there's no nut job preachers, then the nut jobs are going to go, oh, these guys are not nutty enough for me. And I've seen that. I have seen that. Like, this crazy guy comes in preaching the same message that I've, you know, heard my whole life.
Yeah.
Just with these crazy, you know, like, things that he says. And you go, okay. And then he's got this huge audience of all these crazy people going, ah! You know? And then there's baptisms, like, and people are on fire for Christ. And you're like, these guys are nuts. But the gospel's reaching every tongue.
Yeah.
Even if it's a nutty one.
Yeah.
So
You know what? I'll take that.
Yeah.
I do agree with that. I wish that there was. I think there's a difference between what God uses and his ideal. And I think his ideal would be that we don't need the nut jobs.
Yeah, I know.
So-
No, for
because they
sure.
discredit the others. But yeah, I
they're
hear
a lot
what
of
you're
fun
saying.
as well, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you got
A little
some.
bit of nut job in me.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you.
I enjoy it. I think it's,
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyway, but what I think what I'd like to cycle back to is this idea that at the end of the day, the real important message that we have to proclaim is, yes, there is present truth, and understanding what the prophecies are telling us about these organizations at the end of time. The papacy is not alone in that, right? That is a part of it, but the whole picture is much bigger than that. And God is calling his people out of all of these false organizations, and that's where we should be investing our attention and our energy in. Number one, making sure that we are hearing his voice, that we are being called out of where we are, because I'm sure there's a bit of Babylon in all of us, right? But also the fact that we recognize that that God has his people in those places, and we should be also helping them get out of those places. That, as I see it, and we're thinking about this transition that the Catholic Church is going through right now, all I'm thinking about is how do we use that news as a way to tell the good news? And that's what I'm hoping is the takeaway for us from this conversation anyway.
Yeah, I got a great verse. I wanted to read it for other reasons, but
yeah.
Infer what you will. John, so you're going to go to John, but we didn't quite get there.
Yeah.
In chapter 2, it says, "My little children, these things I write to you, so that you may not sin. And if anyone does sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous, and he himself is a propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for the whole world." So,
Yeah.
I really like that verse.
Yeah, that is awesome. There's no substitute for that, there's no substitute for that connection to Christ. I like that. So, back to the title, just to perhaps finish where we started. The title that I put on this one was, why the next pope is irrelevant. And why is he irrelevant? Because two reasons.
He's a puppet.
Yeah, he's a puppet. He is a cog in the system. But he's also irrelevant because who the Pope is doesn't have any bearing on our relationship with God. That is direct between us and God. The Pope does not stand in that gap. So
I think what's relevant is that there's a Pope.
Yes.
And there's always going to be a Pope until the end times. So
yeah.
Whether it's this guy or the next guy or the next guy, it doesn't matter, because the fact that there is a Pope is all that really is relevant.
The system is still operating.
That's exactly right. The system's operating. The next, it is irrelevant. The next Pope is irrelevant, because if he's the one to finish it all off or not, well, it's going to be a Pope.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and if we live to see whichever Pope it is that finishes it off, that's pretty exciting then.
It's not just the Pope who finishes it off either.
No, but what I mean is the last one. But I get you.
The devil really is pulling all the strings.
Yes.
Yeah, the last great deception.
100%.
And
he's got, we talked about this when we talked about the Satan's strategies, but he's got a million deceptions going on at the moment.
Yeah.
Everyone's deceived about something else.
Yeah. We'll see this new Messiah guy that's popped up.
Oh, no.
Really?
Did you see it?
No.
Oh, yeah. This Messiah guy, he's getting quite a significant following too. And he's claiming...
Don't drink the cordial.
He's claiming to be
Kool-Aid.
the new, the successor of Muhammad, Jesus.
Oh, I did see this. Yeah, he's wearing all black and he's got crazy eyes.
Yeah.
Crazy eyes.
Yeah, I was like, how does anybody believe...
A lot of people.
This
apparently.
guy, he looked satanic.
Yeah. So, but he's claiming that he's this
That's what Muhammad did.
omni. He's claiming he's like omni-denominational, whatever. Like so
he bridges all of the
bridges Jewish,
religions,
Christian,
Buddhist,
whatever.
everything.
Like he's the culmination of all of them.
Good for him.
Yeah. So let's see how that one rolls out. But anyway, do you guys have anything else you want to share in this particular conversation?
I think I don't know if it really fits the theme of this podcast, but I think we're gonna have to do like a 1260 thing.
Yes, actually do a proper episode on that.
Proper episode on 1260.
Yep.
Just to make things make sense.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I think that's a great idea. We should do that because I think we've alluded to it, we've mentioned it, but I don't think we've ever on the show.
It
actually
doesn't really fit
it.
the conversation form as much. It's just going to be a Bible study,
It'll
but
be
I
a
think we
teaching
should
thing.
do it
I'll bring
anyway.
questions.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I think we should do
Hey,
it.
you know how
anyway.
we should do this? We should bring someone on the show who has never heard it before.
That would be fun.
Yeah. And then
because then we'd all be the nut jobs.
Yeah. But literally, they can ask the beginner-minded questions.
I think it has to be a long form, like anyway,
spend an afternoon on it, kind of deal.
just so it doesn't feel rushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, or a 3-parter or something at least.
Yeah, break it up.
Yep. Yeah, that could be fun. Anyways, just thinking about that. So,
Willing participant.
yeah, I might even have someone in mind. So anyway.
Cool. Sounds good.
Anyway, we'll leave that there. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode. It's been fun, and we look forward to catching you guys next week for the next episode. God bless.